This is how Iran may be setting itself up for a strategic collapse. 2:47 a.m. local time. The bridge of the USS Gerald R. Ford is no longer just a control room. It has turned into a living nervous system, overloaded by streams of data. On the AN/SPY-6 tactical screens, the night sky over the Persian Gulf is no longer calm and dark. It is flashing red, filled with an electromagnetic storm. 50 incoming cruise vectors are cutting through the dense air above the Strait of Hormuz at Mach 0.9. Distance, 30 miles. In a corridor barely 2 nautical miles wide, this 100,000-ton giant is not moving like a sleek naval platform. It is a massive block of steel caught inside a pressure chamber. The question is no longer whether it can maneuver away. Physics does not allow a supercarrier to turn sharply enough in a space like this. The real question is whether its systems can bend the rules of reality inside one of the most dangerous choke points on Earth. 2:48 a.m. The 14,000-foot Zagros Cliffs are not just mountains to the command center in Tehran. They are part of the plan. Natural radar reflectors, geological amplifiers, terrain turned into a tactical advantage. When Ford's radar pulses strike the limestone walls, they do not return cleanly. They scatter, they fracture, they create layers of clutter so dense that even a small bird could appear on the screen like a major incoming threat. It is tactical misdirection on a national scale. The Ford is now facing algorithmic overload. Its defense management system is built to scan up to 1,000 targets per second. But now it is being overwhelmed by thousands of cheap decoys spread across the strait. Mylar balloons, reflective kites, lightweight drones, and aluminum-covered objects designed to confuse the sensors. 45 seconds. That is the critical pause inside the machine's logic. The system is forced to choose between a harmless floating object and a high-speed incoming threat. And while the AI is trapped inside its validation loops, 5 real sea-skimming projectiles drop to just 10 feet above the waves, disappearing into Doppler interference. 2:50 a.m. Suddenly the radar display erupts. First 50 contacts, then 100, then 200. To the human eye, it looks like the entire sky is collapsing. But this is not a massive incoming formation. It is a carefully staged storm of false signals. Iran has filled the bottleneck with thousands of reflective balloons, foil-lined kites, and small drones designed for one purpose: computational paralysis. The AN/SPY-6 radar, one of the most advanced active electronically scanned array systems ever deployed, operates through thousands of digital antenna modules. It can track enormous numbers of objects at once. But here, its greatest strength becomes its weakness. Every reflective fragment produces a convincing radar signature. Every false signal demands attention. The system must detect, track, and classify. It is built to avoid missing anything, and that is exactly what creates the opening. The AI is drowning in ghost contacts. It does not fail. It hesitates. For 45 seconds, the logic gates are flooded with uncertainty. The system races to separate a high-speed cruise threat moving hundreds of feet per second from a drifting balloon moving with the wind. And while the screen fills with chaos, the real move happens below it. The Iranians have not just filled the air with false signals. They have turned the entire digital environment into a trap. The Ford is struggling to breathe through the noise, her sensors buried under layers of electronic debris. But in the U.S. Navy, a ship does not need to rely only on its own eyes. It only needs to stay connected to the grid. This is NIFC-CA, one of the most advanced target-sharing networks ever built. 30,000 feet above the chaos, an E-2D advanced Hawkeye circles in the cold upper air. Its radar is not trapped by the mountains. It is not confused by the clutter dancing above the waves. From that height, it looks down through the storm and separates illusion from reality. To the Ford, the screen shows a swarm of signals. To the Hawkeye, there are only 5 real threats. It filters out the mylar, the foil, the drifting decoys, and the lightweight distractions as if peeling away layers from an image. What remains are 5 sea-skimming targets racing just above the surface. The Ford's own system is still trapped in the noise, but that no longer matters. Through the Link 16 tactical data network, the Hawkeye sends a fire control quality track directly into the Ford's combat system. The carrier stops trying to solve the chaos alone. It bypasses the clutter completely. Then the solution is handed off to a U.S. Navy Arleigh Burke-class destroyer positioned 10 miles offshore, out in deeper, cleaner water, where the signal is sharp and the interference is minimal. The Ford does not need to see the incoming threats clearly on her own main screen. She only needs to give the command. The destroyer's launch cells open, and a salvo of SM-6 interceptors rises into the night. They are not guided by the Ford's overloaded radar. They are flying on the Hawkeye's elevated view. The network has closed the gap. Iran believed it had blinded the giant. What it failed to understand was that the giant was never alone. It was standing inside an invisible web, and the entire U.S. Navy was already pulling on the threads. 2:51 a.m. The SM-6 interceptors cut through the sky, but the 5 incoming threats make one final move. They drop even lower, only 5 feet above the waves, trying to slip beneath the radar horizon. They are 5 miles out. The Ford system, still fed by the Hawkeye's data, follows the terminal dive. 5 seconds to impact. The carrier does not unleash a storm of gunfire. Instead, a silent aperture on the island's superstructure slides open. Helios comes online. This system does not launch a projectile. It sends a concentrated beam of energy at the speed of light. There is no smoke trail, no roaring launch, no visible arc across the sky, just instant contact. In a fraction of a second, the beam burns through the Seeker window at the front of the incoming threat. It does not need to tear the body apart. It only needs to overwhelm the sensor array behind the nose. 2 seconds to impact. The sensors fail. The guidance system is flooded with heat noise and loses its lock. Traveling at extreme speed and now flying blind, the 5 threats lose stability. They do not reach the carrier. They tumble out of control and slam into the Persian Gulf, disappearing into the dark water just 500 feet from the Ford's beam. The ship does not even shake. 2:53 a.m. The aerial threat is gone, but the trap has another layer. Deep beneath the Ford's keel, the sea begins to wake. Iran has seeded the Hormuz Channel with EM-52 programmable bottom mines. These are not simple pressure devices. They are smart acoustic systems designed to listen for a very specific sound profile. The low-frequency signature of the Ford's twin reactor-driven propulsion system. 3 minutes to the danger zone. The Ford's sonar arrays light up. Multiple acoustic signatures detected. The carrier is inside a field of autonomous underwater threats. But the captain does not turn away. She drives deeper into the danger. Knifefish UUV deployed. An unmanned underwater vehicle slips from the Ford's stern like a predator entering dark water. It is not simply searching for mines, it is manipulating them. Using low-frequency sonar, Knifefish identifies the EM-52 devices and begins to imitate the Ford's acoustic signature. It becomes a digital ventriloquist beneath the surface. The UUV projects a synthetic ghost signal of the carrier's engine noise, making it appear as though the Ford is moving away from her real position and toward the Iranian swarm boats waiting in the shallows. The EM-52 sensors take the bait. They believe the carrier is passing directly over their trigger zone. Then the seafloor erupts. The underwater shockwave does not strike the Ford. It tears through the water beneath the Iranian boat formation instead. A 200-foot column of water rises from the Gulf, and inside the Iranian control room, every operator screen goes dark. It is a ruthless strategic move, using the opponent's own smart weapons to open a path through the very trap meant to stop the Ford. But the real turn is not the blast beneath the water. It is what happens inside the bunker. As Iranian operators in the Coastal Command Center scramble to bring their dead consoles back online, the deeper problem begins to unfold. The Ford has not only used Knifefish to trigger the mines ahead of schedule, it has used the unmanned underwater vehicle as a covert data injector. While Knifefish was copying the carrier's acoustic signature and drawing the minefield away from the Ford's real position, it was also sending a powerful short-range burst of digital code into the underwater acoustic modem network controlling the Iranian mine system. The Ford's combat management system, now operating through a quantum-accelerated validation loop, does not simply neutralize the minefield. It redirects it. Far below the surface, in the dark pressure of the Hormuz seabed, the remaining EM-52 mines do not shut down. They update. A firmware reversal begins. After receiving the Ford's synthetic command stream, the mine's target recognition logic is turned inside out. Devices originally designed to track the deep, low-frequency sound of a massive nuclear-powered carrier are suddenly reassigned to detect something completely different: the sharp, unstable cavitation pattern of Iranian high-speed attack boats. The very boats that placed the mines are now the signatures the mines are listening for. The Iranian swarm commander, still trying to process the first massive water column, looks back at his tactical display. Then his radar scope begins to glow bright gold. The friendly markers on his own minefield vanished. In their place, pulsing red threat indicators appeared across the display. The mines were not drifting anymore. They were tracking. Inside the command center, Iranian officers watched as their own internal communication system began folding back on itself. The Ford had taken control across the entire digital battlespace. What had been built as an underwater perimeter had turned into a trap aimed back at the people who created it. One by one, the high-speed boats pushed their engines harder, trying to outrun the silent signatures waiting beneath them. But the EM-52s were already locked in. The water erupted with a chain of secondary blasts. It was a defense system correcting itself against its original owners. For the second phase of the engagement, the Ford did not need to launch another interceptor. It did not need another laser pulse. It simply reached through knife fish, touched the opponent's own control system, and convinced the minefield that its commanders were now the priority threats. The Iranian commander tried to send a shutdown signal into the field. It never reached its destination. The Ford's electronic warfare suite had already blocked it while simultaneously disguising itself as the Iranian command center. It was the perfect man-in-the-middle operation. The system believed it was obeying headquarters, when in reality, the Ford was holding the master key. The swarm boats were not stopped by a direct strike from above. They were stopped by something worse. They realized too late that they no longer controlled their own weapons. The screens in the Tehran bunker went black, not because of a power surge, but because the Ford had uploaded a system-wide command into the defensive network covering the strait. The carrier moved through the glassy water, her wake shining under the moonlight. No towering flames, no smoke rolling into the sky, no shattered deck, only the steady rhythm of the turbines and the cold understanding that the opponent had been beaten by the structure of its own system. The Ford was not just a floating city, it had become something far more dangerous, a digital predator inside the enemy's network, consuming the system from within. On the bridge, the radar officer leaned back, his uniform damp with cold sweat. He stared at the display. It was not merely clear, it had been rewritten. 3:10 a.m. The opponent's entire network was now an empty shell, locked behind a master key held by the Ford. But one question still hung in the air. What if? What if one of those 5 incoming threats had survived the laser's glare? What if the Ford's network synchronization had lagged for just 2 more seconds? If even one had reached the flight deck, the result would not have been a simple onboard emergency. It would have been one of the most expensive mistakes in military history. The immediate cost would be measured in billions. Steel, aircraft, systems, and technology that cannot be replaced overnight. But the strategic cost would be far greater. For Tehran, a single successful hit would have been their historic headline. For Washington, it would have been the signal to dismantle every radar site, every launch platform, and every command node from Kermanshah to the coast in a matter of hours. They wanted a headline. They would have invited a full-scale response. But they failed because they underestimated the one thing that decides the modern battlefield: the speed of data. That is the harsh lesson. In this new era, speed is not measured only in Mach numbers. It is measured in how quickly your network can identify deception, strip away false signals, and reveal the real threat hiding underneath. The Ford is already miles away now, a silent steel monolith fading into the morning mist. Somewhere inside a bunker in Tehran, an operator is still staring at a black screen, waiting for the impact that never came. And if you think that balloon swarm was just a clever trick, think again. In modern naval warfare, the Ford is never alone. She is the center of a carrier strike group, a floating electrified hive mind where every sensor, aircraft, ship, and weapon becomes part of one connected system. That is why the Ford remains so difficult to touch. She is not just steel. She is the peak expression of a civilization's information technology. And she proves one thing very clearly. When you challenge a grid, you are not just facing a ship. You are facing a system that sees faster, thinks faster, and reacts before you even understand what has happened. And that is why, in the next crisis, the real question will not be who fires first. It will be whose network understands the truth first. Because by the time the alarms begin to sound, the battle may already be over.